first take. Welcome and happy Canadian Thanksgiving, everyone. Let's write a song. We're coming to you from Treaty 1 territory, Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada. I'm Andy Cole, your host. On this show, I sit down with cool people, usually one at a time, and then we write a song together. That is what we do here out of my West Broadway apartment, where things happen to be cooling down a little bit. Actually, it's nice inside the apartment. I got the radiators going, very warming, cozy vibe. It's beyond the radiator on the other side of the wall where, oh wow, things have really turned around. Winter has descended early on Winnipeg. It's been a cooler fall, even late summer. August was pretty cool and rainy. September too. And last week, out of the blue, literally, we had these like open skies. It was sunny. It was gorgeous, like 20 degrees 2 days in a row. If you're an American, that's 68 degrees. When Winnipeg gets that kind of weather in October, everyone goes outside because you got to take advantage of it. I went for a nice long walk down to the Forks with my lady friend. We had a great day, and we were walking up a very tree-lined street. We have this beautiful autumn canopy in Winnipeg. If you look at the city from above, it just looks like a forest with buildings poking out of it. It's so green here. And so when the colors change, you're underneath, you get the sun shining through the red and the yellow leaves, and some of them are still green, and you're looking up, and it's like this stained glass, like cathedral window above you. And you feel like you're in this church, and you're just worshiping the beauty of nature, looking at it above you, and it really is stunning. And then literally 2 days later, that all came crashing down. We got this crazy snowstorm, really heavy, wet slush, basically, was just falling on the city. It weighed down all the branches, and they were breaking everywhere. My neighborhood looks like a war zone. I had to pull the equivalent of about half of a tree off of my car. I have a space in a parking lot behind my building, and the pieces of this tree just kept falling on my car. I had to pull two big ones off. The first night, my neighbor came by and she's like, yeah, a big piece of a tree just fell on your car. I saw it happen. She was okay, thankfully. My car, also no damage. And then the next morning, this even bigger limb had fallen across the top of it. Still no damage, but like 7 a.m, I had to go to work early. Dragging that off your car, not a great way to start the day, but we know how to live with it. I've said this before. It's always winter in Winnipeg. Like even in summer, winter is hanging around. We think about it. Every warm, beautiful, hot day, someone will go, oh yeah, and only another month and a half of this, and then we're back to the snow, because it's true. It is true. It is a perennial flower. Winter lives here. Summer comes to visit. This is winter's place. Winter sublets its apartment to the other seasons. You get spring, summer, fall. They come by. They say hello. You get to catch up. Winter's name is on the lease. But that's okay. We deal with it. We live on. For this week, we're talking to Alexa Joy. She's our guest. She's one of the first interviews that I did for this season. It was actually when the weather was starting to get nice. I think back in May, she came around on one of the first warm days we had. Alexa's known for her advocacy work. She's a total SJW. She's the founder of Black Space Winnipeg. She's also a writer, a poet. She's a public speaker. And I first met her because I needed someone to help me with an element of this podcast, because I wanted the theme song that you hear at the beginning to have beatboxing. I wanted it to be this cool, organic, sort of unidentifiable as a beat. You're like, at first it sounds like drums, and you realize there's this more organic human feel to it. That's Alexa. So I put it out on Facebook. I'm like, I don't know who to hire, who does beatboxing, who's good. And her name came up from a couple people, and I knew who she was, but I didn't know her. So I reached out, and she did the work for me. And then I said, hey, it would be great to have you on the show when I get it up and going. And she was into that too. So she came by, we had a great conversation, and the song that comes of it, achieved a goal that I was hoping to reach at some point in the show, and I'm glad it happened so early. I'll talk about that after. First, please meet our guest this week and enjoy the song. Here is Alexa Joy. Actually, I did want to start with letting people know that you're the first thing anyone hears when they listen to any episode of this podcast.
Yes.
Because you were here like before any of it started. I had you over to do the vocal percussion that starts off the theme song.
It was awesome.
It was. Thank you for doing that, by the way, too.
Of course.
It was like total cold call. We never really met. It's just like, hey, do you want to come over?
Absolutely.
Do what you do.
No,
I
love that spontaneous type of stuff. It's great.
And you were great at it. It sounds excellent.
You.
Everyone who's like, at the time of this recording, it's still being a little bit pieced together. I'm adding some stuff, but everyone who hears what you did was blown away.
Thank you so much.
And where has that taken you? I saw a photo of you like on like a fancy looking stage.
Yeah, I actually I did the series from May 9th to 11th called Art Home. Okay. And it's this artist series started by Alexandra Elliott and Hillary. Oh my God, I'm blanking on her last name. Hillary and Alexandra started this artist series called Art Home that basically showcases 3 featured artists for like a 20-minute set each. Okay. And it's like cultivates Winnipeg's art community and provides a safe space and a stage for artists in Winnipeg. And I think this was their 4th installment. So I was one of the featured artists. And it was my first time performing in a very professional setting. Like I performed since I was a teenager, but where I was at the Prairie Theatre Exchange in their smaller venue, and we had a technician and lighting, and Alex and Hillary were amazing. I didn't have to worry about anything other than performing, and I've never had that luxury before as an artist to just focus on my craft and not worry about promotion and getting the word out and all the logistics and behind the scenes. They're just like, do your thing and we'll handle the rest.
That's such a treat.
It is.
When you're doing like an artistic thing and someone's like, oh, I've got everything. You just show up.
Exactly. Yeah. Let us know what you need. Oh. So that was a really great reminder that I need to be doing more of this.
Mm-hmm. What artistic pursuits have you been lately? I saw your name on a flyer recently.
Yeah,
was that a spoken word thing?
That was, you probably saw Art Home. So that was probably Art Home.
Okay.
So that's is where I did a piece called Speaking Through Rhythm. Okay. And it's basically communicating with the audience strictly through vocal percussion. I remixed a couple just vocal tracks. Like I covered a track actually that was improvised by Bobby McFerrin, and one track by Nina Simone that's just her voice, and then I'm beatboxing over it. Oh, so that was so much fun. And then in the second half, I made the audience beatbox. So I'm like, this is what I do. Now it's your turn.
Yeah.
And every night they were so engaged and just willing to learn. And it was so amazing. They were just so cute. And everyone from like people my grandparents' age to little kids were just like, I was like, hey, repeat after me. And they were going, and it was amazing.
Was it like, what was the size of the audience that was like beatboxing back at you?
That venue held 75.
And they were pretty much all coming.
Yeah,
wow.
I was like, repeat after me, and they weren't scared either. They were just totally into it. And I'm like, I love this. So can you imagine people your grandparents' age beatboxing? It was the best thing ever.
Some octogenarian people getting into beatboxing. That's great.
It was awesome.
I know. And like, that's a great story from you. And what is like, think of like, if my grandma told me that like she went to a show and that happened, I'd be like,
you'd be like, what?
I wish I should have been there. I need to spend more time with my grandma.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
And there were some people that are like, I'm going to go home and show my grandkids. I'm like, please do. They will think you're the coolest person ever.
Oh, wow. So you mentioned Bobby McFerrin. He's coming. Is that related to, did you just pick Bobby McFerrin, or is that related? Because he's coming into town, right?
Yeah, he is. That was actually very spontaneous. I listen to him a lot, and he's one of the best people to, I would say, explore and listen to as a vocal percussionist. What he does vocally is insane. And he has this one song that he did on stage live, and it's called I think it's Spanish for like improvisation or something like that. Okay. And it's just him going through this like ballad, and he's doing a whole bunch of different harmonies, and I added a vocal percussion element to it, and I was honestly just beatboxing over what he was doing. And there's a video. I'll post that as soon as it's done editing. But it was one of the first times where I felt very free on stage as an artist, and I wasn't worrying about the other hats that I wear, especially the political hats that I wear, and I just got to be raw on stage and have fun with people. So I think that was a good break, but I almost talked myself out of it. I was very much like I was overwhelmed in April and throughout spring, and I'm like, I don't have time to do this, and there was just that doubt in the back of my head. And then I'm like, you know what? You were asking for an opportunity like this, and it came about. Yeah. So if you back out now, you're never going to push yourself to a new place in your artistic practice. You're always going to be stagnant and complacent, and I don't want to be like that. As soon as I'm comfortable, I know I've hit, a place where I can't explore anymore. So, it was I pushed myself in an uncomfortable position because I knew that I would grow from it, at least from an artist's point of view, and I'm really glad I did that.
Yeah, that's an amazing opportunity to have. You should, when you get that video together before Bobby McFerrin shows up.
Oh my God, I'm going to show him and be like, let me just come on stage with you.
Is he on Twitter, or he must be on Facebook or something? He's on Instagram.
Yeah. He is, yeah.
Oh, just put a clip up and tag him and be like, we got to hang out when you come to Winnipeg.
Yeah,
he's coming for Jazz Fest, right?
He is, yeah. So I'm very excited.
Oh, get it to him. He'll be so into it.
I hope so. I hope I did it. People were really into it, so let's hope he would be into it too.
Yeah. So you do the spoken word, do you do music as well? Like instrument music?
I play the drums, so I'm very comfortable with blues and funk. I spent a lot of my late teens and early 20s in like divey bars for jam nights, like at the Windsor and the George and Transcona.
Okay.
Places like I hung around a lot of like old time, like times change, like old school.
Times change.
Aggressive older white dudes. And
really?
Yeah.
At a country bar?
Yeah, I learned a lot. But it was a place where I could go because I didn't have a drum set, and there was a place where I could go and really learn and just be free. And when I'm playing drums or when I'm beatboxing, when I'm really into it, the best way I can describe it is I just kind of black out, and I don't really remember everything I do until I look at a recording because I get so into it. So that's something that really helps me as an artist and just as a human being to have that safe space to unplug,
Drums are just so cathartic. Like you can't. It's so hard to go that wrong on drums. Like, exactly. Even if you just want to play a dead simple beat, you can play as much as is in you into that dead simple beat, and it's something. I forgot too. There's like a little overlap with our musical history because I think did you play drums with Hearing Trees for a little while?
Oh my God, I did. That was when I was like 20. I can't remember even how I met Graham. I think I met him through the people I used to jam with, like for these blues jams. And he said he's looking for a drummer, and I was totally into it. And then I ended up going to school in Toronto for that summer, so he needed someone right away. So it was just like, do what you got to do, man. Like, no hard feelings. But yeah, that was I always, that's so random. I always forget about that, but I totally was back in the day.
But that, you're part of like Winnipeg's music scene if you meet someone you've never met before, but you've been in the same band.
Yeah.
You're like, okay. It's just such a revolving door in this city. I do love it, but it's so funny. Like, actually my sister's band, they tour a lot, and they were just in London, Ontario, and a friend of mine. I don't know if you know Matt Moskal. He's not from here, but he lived here for years, and then he's just moved back to Ontario.
Cool.
And he went and saw my sister's band play.
Oh, wow.
And then when he was done, he went and introduced himself because they didn't know him. And he's like, yeah, Matt played bass in my band for one tour we did when one of our members couldn't do it. And he's like, yeah, and I also used to play in your shoes with Andy. And my sister's like, is the whole city like that? And I'm like, pretty much. It's like, if you've been in one band,
And I did an interview with Molly Johnson, who's like this Canadian jazz legend singer, for the Jazz Winnipeg podcast for Alleyways, and she was just like, the Canadian music scene, everyone knows each other. Like even like on a national level, we all play with each other, hire each other, and it's very Canada and Winnipeg specifically. We're a small community, so we're gonna bump into each other.
It's funny from working, I worked in radio for years, and that industry works the same too. I found where it's like I would work, I worked all over the country. My first job in radio was in Fort McMurray.
Okay.
And one of the guys I worked with there now works at my old job here.
Wow.
In Winnipeg.
Oh my goodness.
And then I was working in Northern Ontario, and I met this guy who I was working with. And I was like, man, he reminds me so much of this other guy that I knew.
Right.
From Fort McMurray. And then a couple years later, those two guys ended up doing a morning radio show together in some other town. It's the same kind of thing. It's just like, whether you're talking about a city or on a national scale, it's just, there is something about Canada. Maybe it's just... There's just not that much of us, but there's so much geographic space that you will just run into someone you know. Those connections will happen so far away.
Exactly.
Oh, I love it. You did mention something I do want to broach, if you're okay with it. You mentioned your political work as well.
Oh, yeah.
You're founder and president of Black Space Winnipeg?
It's exhausting.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
Politics?
Yeah, really.
Well, that's the thing. The broad question I had, well, maybe, why don't we start, do you want to explain kind of how you started Black Space Winnipeg, what it is?
Sure. So that was 3 summers ago. Oh my God, 3 summers ago now. 2016. I majored in human rights from the University of Winnipeg. So I was a little frustrated with my department of the lack of, I'd say, Black advocacy rhetoric in my department, and really coming from a human rights perspective in terms of radical Black advocacy, right? Like Black Lives Matter, the approach that Malcolm X had, very prolific leaders, even amazing journalists that I respect in Canada, like Desmond Cole. That was my area of passion. That's why I got into human rights. And given the lack of content throughout my department, I was like, you know what, it's not feeding me anymore. I was going outside of my academic, sphere to find any type of community connection. And I noticed in Canada, there was a lot of the Black Lives Matter rhetoric was coming obviously out of Toronto. A chapter had started in Vancouver, and, Manitoba was like, what are we doing? And one night, I just remember I was sitting at home and watching a lot of the videos at the time that were happening in terms of the deaths of Philando Castile and Alton Sterling, Sandra Bland, and innocent Black folks in the States and in Toronto just being murdered and harassed or killed by police. And I couldn't sit with it anymore, and I didn't feel Winnipeg was speaking about it enough on a public level. Of course, I was speaking about it within my small circles and my friends and my family, but it wasn't an issue that was being discussed enough, I don't think, in mainstream discourse at least. So I went online one night and I made an event that was called Not Another # Black Lives Matter, and that was, we all rallied July 2016 at the Ledge just to show our solidarity and express our support for what was happening to folks that we can identify with across the country and in the States. And it wasn't necessarily a chapter of Black Lives Matter because people were having a hard time to wrap their head around the fact that they didn't see or hear about police brutality and harassment in Winnipeg, so therefore they thought it didn't exist.
Right.
And it was frustrating. So that's where the idea of like safe space and Black space really came to be. Mm-hmm. And I'd say since then we've been doing events that attempt to really make people remember that Black people exist on the prairies, that discrimination exists here, and how do we really reshape and define our narrative from a Afro Black Canadian perspective in Manitoba, across the diaspora, and it's been a great journey, but also sometimes it gets very exhausting to talk to people who are convinced that racism doesn't exist in a Canadian context or white supremacy. So that's kind of been my challenge, but I'm deep in this work now, and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon.
Yeah. I really like what your group's doing.
Well, thank you so much.
One of the first things I did when I was in Toronto for a year, and I moved back, and it was right around the time that there was some friendly white supremacists were going to be doing a march to the ledge, and there was
Don't
that.
They always?
Yeah. So there was like a meeting. It was at the university, and I went over there, and you were like emceeing it. I think.
Oh yeah, the community forum.
Yeah. And that was great. And something you said, it's actually something I had a note on kind of anyway. Just the idea when people say like they don't think that there's racism or they don't see it, and it's just. Do you find, maybe generally out there and also specific to the city, what's the proportion of people who say that who are being genuine when they just like don't? Oh, I had no idea kind of people, right. Or like I had no idea people versus the like shut up, that's not whatever.
Yeah.
Not to be negative about it, but
For
like
sure. So I'd break it down. The people that I see all the time come out to like the social justice events, like especially like white allies. Those are people who the small, collective of folks I see on a regular basis. So I'm like, okay, they're there. But I would say I'd say we're getting to a point where we're really scared to cross that line of we have a problem in the city. And the best way I can sum that up is through the media storm I went with the whole Winnipeg Jets whiteout nonsense that happened.
Did something happen there?
Yeah, that happened in April. And to make the long story short, I basically said not everyone feels safe in large crowds of predominantly white people getting drunk. And the Jets fans, as passionate as they are, definitely retaliated with, no, hockey has nothing to do with race, and my one person of color friend feels safe when they come here, so I don't know what you're talking about.
I saw those pictures.
Yeah.
It was like, what about this guy? And it's just like...
Yeah.
Like someone they don't know in the corner of a photo. And
yeah.
Like, see, what about that guy?
Yeah.
Like, oh, okay,
it's like, well, I can't speak for him. But who knows why he's there?
Right.
So, yeah, that was, and you know what? That was exhausting, but it was also a very helpful reminder that Winnipeggers are just as much in denial as, the Canadian progressive liberal who's convinced that they don't have racism to work through, and bias and prejudice, and it was helpful to see where we're at as a city when McLean said we're the most racist city in Canada.
Yeah.
It just reminded me a lot of that. Like, you are really not ready to have this conversation, and we struck the fragility nerve, and we were honestly just trying to have a grown-up conversation, and I don't even think people read what I wrote. I think they jumped on the bandwagon, and people got very sensitive and defensive. And it was unfortunate because it really showed that they're not in a place to think critically or to think about anyone else but themselves and their beloved sport and their beloved culture that comes with, the Jets. So it was a transitional period, to say the least.
I think a lot of people read what their friends wrote about what you wrote on Facebook. I got that impression. I'm still friends with a few people on Facebook who will kind of have an opinion on something and they'll write it up, and then sometimes I'll get frustrated because you'll see someone, and I don't know where it comes from specifically in a person, but they'll write something that I don't know if they're purposely not misinterpreting what they've read, or they for real don't get it. But the problem, this is, I guess, with social media, where everybody's responding, and a lot of times they're responding to a reaction to something.
Exactly.
And so it's like, by the time they're so riled up about the reaction to something that they just, maybe all that energy is just whipped up there, that they don't even go and actually seek out.
No, they don't. And I actually saw a couple of posts that were like, at first I didn't understand, but then I went into it further and I was like, thank you. Like, I appreciate that. That's what you should do.
Yeah. I feel like, to the point you made about people's immediate reaction to like the most racist city thing in McLean's, or your piece that you wrote for the Whiteout. I think, and this is this is self-work I've tried to do in my life.
Sure.
When someone tells you did something, or someone tells you you're being a certain way, or, you do this, I try to not immediately react like, no, I don't. Do you know what I mean? Someone's like, you kind of do this sometimes. I was like, no, I don't.
Yeah.
And you're like, what I'm trying to recognize personally is when I have that reaction, realizing that that's a flag where it's like, oh, you got to listen to that person, because if your first reaction is to be defensive, part of you knows. Probably. Exactly. And doesn't want to talk about it.
Yes.
So no, I don't. It's like, it's a denial, and it's a like, be quiet. I don't want to talk about it.
Exactly.
I don't want to broach this subject.
Absolutely.
I don't want to deal with it. You're making me uncomfortable with this.
Absolutely.
But you're, Do you find it's getting better?
Do I find it's getting better? No. I think people convince themselves it's getting better when we have a glimpse of, let's say like a tokenized person of color in a position of power, and we say, oh, there's a step forward. Right. But the system is internally and forever flawed. I don't think it's getting better. I think it's been the same. Like, sure, some things have changed. Some laws have been enacted, but what we're seeing right now, like I just saw the Ford government cut, I believe, like Indigenous funding in Ontario for either arts or education, like millions of dollars. That's a province over to us. We are most likely going to be a majority PC government this year. They are banning abortion in, Alabama. So, I think the more that, marginalized folks, people of color, Black people, push for their equality, the more the system is testing us. And I don't even know if we can say we're going backwards. I just think more layers are getting unveiled, and people, again, like you said, they get defensive and they don't want to talk about issues like race and sexuality and identity because they didn't grow up in a space that allowed them to. So they don't have the tools and they don't have the language. And then they choose to be ignorant. In this day and age, it's a choice, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's not hard to find information about things.
Like, at all.
Type it into Google.
Exactly.
This is the thing. I see people get, again, going back to like a few of these people that I follow on Facebook, it's just like it's almost like they want a struggle.
Yes.
And they're looking for a struggle, and the struggle is like life is so easy for these people, relatively.
Yes.
That it's like the struggle is like I have to live in a world where there's like other pronouns now and people can choose this. And it's like,
I know.
it's like, that's probably not even going to touch your life.
No.
Like barely ever.
Yeah.
And this is like, I've said this so many times to so many people, is like all you have to do is just like the bare minimum, just be respectful.
Yeah.
And if someone tells you you said something wrong, don't say it again.
Exactly.
That's not hard.
No, it's not.
And then if you want to go and do some more work on yourself, then you can.
Exactly.
That again, like you said, that information is out there. It's easy enough to find.
It is.
What gives you hope?
That's a great question. What has given me hope lately is honestly my creative side, like just unplugging. Because like when I posted that about the whiteout, I didn't say anything radical or that hasn't been said before. It was literally just a critical analysis of something that happens in this city. And then, social media just vomited all over
as it does
all of my 3 accounts. And I was like, okay, and it was bad. Like I had to turn off the notifications on Instagram. I couldn't focus on anything else. And people were very violent and aggressive and just like really cruel. And I was like, okay, I anticipated that, but I didn't think it'd have such a reach, like where people in Toronto were talking about it and, bringing up the larger question, like about safe space, about sports culture, and about, who are these spaces built for at the end of the day. So that was, it was a bit of a shock, but what gave me hope through all of that, because it was, there was definitely more aggression than there was positivity. So that was really hard to get over. But after like the storm, literally the social media storm settled, we kind of issued a statement like, thanks for your commentary, and we're going to keep doing the work that we're doing. Like, I didn't know what else, because I already said what I had to say. I didn't know what else to say.
Yeah.
And people that commented, like, after that and reaching out, like, thank you for doing what you're doing, that gives me hope, and the people who pull me aside and, say, hey, you're doing really important work, that keeps me going. It's definitely not enough. Like, I know I'm not, I never try to be the most popular person in the city. I try to be the most honest. So that always won't get me People's Choice Award, right? But I'd rather, be publicly attacked for speaking my truth than to live through my whole life safe and live in silence. I think that's to play it safe. That's why I'm so cautious of politics and, a lot of people of color now getting into politics to, be the representation. But at the end of the day, not a lot of things change. Things change really, if I can be quite honest about that. So I'm comfortable to wear the radical, if I can even call it, hat. But what does get emotionally exhausting is, sometimes where you just don't feel like your work is being appreciated because not enough people are reaching out, and you're still having the same conversation. Like I was invited to speak on a panel a few weeks ago on resisting racism and xenophobia, and it was like the regular white, allies that I see at every other event. And I was like, I've probably spoken over 60 panels in the past 4 years, and I'm really tired of telling you to come collect your people. Like, it's just, I don't know what else to say. Like,
That's a great way to put it.
I've ran out of things to say about, if you're not willing to address the prejudice that you carry and that you've grown up with, then we're not going to progress forward as a community, as a society, as a country. And we're going to just keep on sugarcoating things and saying, well, look, this person is great because, they're running for whatever position and they're a representation. I don't want to be a representation. I want to get shit done, that's going to have generational effects.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at. But what gives me hope is the few people that reach out and be like, I respect what you said, and, just keep on doing what you're doing.
I love it. Well, Alexa, I think if you're ready, do you want to write a song?
Let's write. Oh my God,
Let's write a song.
I came to write a song.
That's why you're here. Let's do it. Yeah. And then we just we come up with whatever. It can be a beat.
Okay.
There's all the drum sets. It can be.
Okay.
You can be the beat.
I think I might be the beat.
I like that.
What's your preferred genre if you had to pick?
Oh, anything.
Yeah.
I'm into whatever because the whole idea of the show is everyone brings something different, right?
Yeah, cool.
So. Yeah, I'm also not very good at keys, so I might not.
Oh, okay. Hey, I was looking at your guitars and being like, yes, guitars.
Oh yeah,
I love guitars. I really want to learn how to play. Like I know the basic. I couldn't even say I'm anything too crazy. Okay, here we go. That sounds very nice.
Is your reverb before you?
I like the reverb.
Okay.
I like what you're doing right now.
Alexa Joy bringing the beat with the beatboxing, the vocal percussion. I was so happy to have an instrumental track for an episode of the show, and one that feels like it was meant to be an instrumental one, not just like a song we didn't write words for. It just has a vibe. It has a soundtracky feel to me. Also, it was an improvisation. You can hear like the little process at the beginning. That's about how long it was. I just started playing that beat and the little thing on guitar, and there we went. Those are rare on this show, but when you pull off an improv, it sounds great. I also want to say I appreciated in the interview that Alexa was open about her politics, because honestly, that was a big reason I wanted her on the show. Personally, I have serious politics, and I want guests to feel like they can be open about theirs, things that I feel strongly about, but maybe we don't want to hear a white dude talking about it. We want someone with maybe a closer perspective to the issues to be talking about. So that was great. Speaking of politics too, Canadian listeners, our federal election is next week, October 21st. I am not telling you who to vote for, but I am telling you who not to vote for. I don't believe people when they go, I don't care who you vote for, just vote. Because then those people get mad when the person they vote for doesn't win an election. I see that happen a lot. I do care who you vote for. All right? And I care who you don't vote for. There is one party in particular in this country that I guarantee you is going to strip funding out of everything from foreign aid to refugee settlement to healthcare to things like gender reassignment surgeries. In Ontario, I have a friend who was up for a procedure and the Conservative government got in and there's a big delay and it's a big question mark. And then they felt so strongly about this that they had to come out and talk about the issue when they hadn't planned to reveal it that way. This is a close friend of mine, and I feel terrible for them. And I would hate for something like that happened on a provincial level to be scaled up on a federal level. This party, I'm going to say this is the Conservatives I'm talking about. I don't think that's a surprise. I don't think I was being vague. They'll take all these things away in the name of you're paying too much taxes. And then you're going to get pocket change back at best. You won't feel any money you pay less in taxes, okay? But people will be affected in very real ways by the money that's going to get cut. So please vote strategically. It would be wonderful to have your dream candidate win an election. I like this candidate. I like that guy. I like that woman. I like that person's politics. I like them, right? There are people I would rather vote for, but I look at strategically who's going to win, who's going to beat the Conservative Party, and I have to vote for them because I know that that's how voting works. Your vote is not a performance. This is what it comes down to. It's about your power to make things either much worse or a little less bad, and you move the ball forward. It's not fair, but in circumstances like this, it's the reality we're dealing with. So please, Canada, vote on the 21st. Get out there and do it. Do it smart. Help everybody, okay? You can follow us on social media at Hey Let's Write a Song on Instagram, Write a Song Pod on Twitter. We're also on Facebook. And if you listen on iTunes, please rate and review the show there. That helps word get out. And feel free to share the show with other people if you like listening. It is appreciated. I'll see you next week. We have a pretty elaborate song that I'm still working on the mix of because there are a lot of elements to it. I guarantee you it's a very fun interview. It's a super cool song. I'm very proud of it. And I got to get to work finishing it because it's going to be a big production. I'll see you back here next week on Let's Write a Song.